What if the voice you think you know isn't always the same voice that got you dancing in the car or crying in the shower? That's the question that keeps coming up when people dig at Jennifer Lopez's catalog. Not a single smoking gun, but a string of moments where demo voices, background singers, and studio choices left behind a trail. The facts feel small until you line them up. Names like Ashanti, Christina Milian, Natasha Ramos saying the hooks or ad-libs you were actually theirs in the studio. Once you hear that, the song you loved becomes more complicated, and the spotlight starts to feel like a lens that's been focused by someone else. Think about the first time you noticed her. Lopez didn't arrive as just a singer. She arrived as a movement, a Bronx dancer who learned how to make cameras follow her, who turned every wardrobe change and choreography beat into an entire scene. Her Selena performance proved she could carry a role and a culture. She had presence. Unmistakable, magnetic presence, and that presence became part of the product viewers bought. But presence can hide a lot. It can hide whose breath you hear in the mix, whose lines became the hook, and whose work got edited into a star turn. The tension between the body on stage and the voice on the track is where this whole story lives. The industry doesn't help. Pop is built on teams. Demo singers lay down lines, writers hand off top lines, producers stitch pieces together. That's normal. But when demos survive the edit and the demo singer's part becomes the moment the crowd remembers, crediting becomes a moral and financial issue. When those demo voices aren't clearly acknowledged, the story gets messy. People who actually recorded the parts will talk. And once they do, fans listen. That's when you start seeing playlists of demo clips lined up next to final mixes, side-by-side proof that something in the final version didn't come from where you assumed it came from. You can't make sense of this without a timeline. She moved from dancer to actress to a chart-topping pop figure with remarkable speed. It wasn't random. People in the industry pushed. Managers, label execs, and producers put resources behind the package. Some of those resources included songs that had been written and demoed by other artists. In high-pressure windows, when a label wants a summer smash and a star needs to keep momentum, demos get recycled, parts get repurposed, and the face on the cover carries the song. Sometimes that's creative collaboration. Sometimes it's a power move. When you're at the center of one of those moves, you get the hit, and sometimes inherit territory that's more complex than credit lines suggest. Specific songs became flashpoints. The I'm Real remix and Ain't It Funny remix are repeatedly mentioned by industry insiders and collaborators. Ashanti's name keeps coming up in conversations about key parts of those records. Christina Milian's diction and phrasing show up in the hooks of tracks that were marketed under Lopez's name. Then there's Natasha Ramos, who says she sang the chorus and bridge on Jenny from the Block, claiming that the laugh and some ad-libs were hers, and that royalties didn't match what she heard in the final release. When people who actually worked in the sessions speak up, you don't dismiss it as gossip. You check the stems and the demos. Those audio traces rarely lie. You'll hear the defense, pop is collaborative, session singers are part of the toolkit. That's true, but this isn't just about using layers to thicken a track. It's about the most memorable, the sing-along line, the part that gets stuck in your head, being primarily someone else's take. That's where credit and compensation cease to be bureaucratic niceties and become ethical issues. The people who recorded those parts expect transparency and fair share. When the public discovers otherwise, trust erodes. Lopez tried a big move to confront the rumors. She went to film. She invested heavily into a large-scale documentary project intended to show her life, her work, and the truth behind the image. Reports say she put significant personal money behind the project, essentially betting her brand on the idea that revealing her life would silence skepticism. Self-funding a major documentary is bold. It's a signal that someone wants control over narrative more than a partner-led project would allow. But control has trade-offs. Handing the camera your life doesn't guarantee the audience will take your edit as truth. When the documentary landed, viewers had mixed reactions. On one hand, the movie offered intimate moments, family scenes, rehearsals, late-night doubts. For fans, that access felt like permission to empathize. On the other hand, critics and skeptics described the film as carefully curated, moments feeling staged, edits shaping narrative beats with clear strategic purposes. The slippery thing about curated intimacy is the audience can sense it. The camera might be inside the dressing room, but the dressing room is still a set. People quickly started saying the movie resembled a crafted reassessment more than an unvarnished confession. That gap between intention and reception is part of why public trust can be fragile. And then the market reacted. Tickets didn't move the way the team expected. Dates were canceled, and a tour that had been positioned as a vehicle for the new material got reframed as a greatest hits run. That's a classic industry pivot. When the news story doesn't land, sell the nostalgia. It's pragmatic, but it looks like retreat. Fans still came for the old favorites, no surprise, but fewer showed up for a new narrative that to many felt manufactured. Economic signals are blunt tools. When they point the wrong way, the public conversation can shift overnight. There's another layer, partners shaping the script. Reports that Ben Affleck had editorial input in the documentary complicate the "this is me" line. If the film about a single person's interior life includes heavy influence from a partner, the notion of singular confession loses some force. The audience asks implicit questions. Whose voice is being prioritized in the edit? When a spouse or co-star becomes a gatekeeper, rawness can feel choreographed. For people looking for unmediated truth, that's a big red flag. Social media then did what it does best. It compressed narrative into punchlines. Clips of serious-seeming moments were clipped and remixed into memes. Rather than sparking conversation about career pressure or emotional labor, certain scenes became the butt of derisive takes. The internet's appetite for spectacle turned vulnerability into satire fast. When your carefully staged moment becomes a meme, it loses its control and becomes a signal for mockery. That's a PR problem that can spiral because once the meme engine is firing, you can't easily reclaim the context. Creators noticed another problem: infringement claims. Some creators who posted critical breakdowns or clips from the documentary said they received copyright strikes. That moved the debate from the artistic to the procedural. Was the management team using copyright tools to suppress critique? It's hard to tell any single claim without the legal receipts, but the perception alone matters. For independent creators who rely on the platforms for income, a strike is a career risk. Even arguable enforcement can look like heavy-handed reputation management. Optics turned nasty fast. At the level of day-to-day production, a string of anecdotes piled up, stories from on-set workers, drivers, dancers, and receptionists about an artist who could be exacting. Some reported strict rules for drivers, stories about luggage not touching the ground, or cold exchanges with team members. You'll see these incidents framed as diva behavior, or as the necessary edges of managing a giant career. The truth is often in the middle. Big stars develop systems of control that look extreme up close. When multiple people tell similar tales, it shapes a public image. Whether every anecdote is provable doesn't matter as much as the pattern the anecdotes form. Public perception builds on patterns, not single incidents. Even so, Lopez's career contains undeniable peaks. She broke barriers for Latin performers, delivered iconic moments like the Versace dress that created a cultural moment, and reportedly fueled one of the first massive spikes in Google image searches, and became one of the first artists to hit simultaneous #1 film and album marks. She headlined large stages, commanded box office draws, and built lucrative residencies. Those wins matter when you judge legacy. They're not canceled out by controversy. They are, instead, complicated by it. That complication extends into compensation and credit. Vocalists who contributed to famous tracks sometimes say they didn't receive the royalties or recognition that matched how their parts survived in the final cut. This is not unique to any one star. It's an industry problem. But it becomes headline material when it touches an artist of Lopez's scale. Session work, background vocals, and ghost singing are part of a system that often keeps names off the marquee, even when their work carries the tune. Fans are less sympathetic to that opacity now than they were a decade ago. You can frame this in two ways. One, as a team sport where a performer is the front person who curates an entire production. Two, as a moment of missing honesty, where important contributors aren't fully seen. Both readings are true in isolation, and both feel incomplete together. The friction is exactly why debates about authenticity and credit keep returning. Fans want to believe in a simple hero, one voice, one person. The music industry rarely delivers that simplicity. That friction shows up in present-day market metrics. When a new single underperforms or a tour needs to lean on old hits, teams pivot. It's business. Yet every pivot reinforces the question, is the brand being propped up by packaging more than by fresh artistic ownership? Those are hard, sometimes ugly questions. They're also practical ones if your business model is selling music and shows to people who want to feel connected to the person performing. Here's the soap opera beat. Power and image can protect success until they can't. The same drive that made Lopez a machine, discipline, brand shaping, relentless production, can become a liability when audiences demand frankness. The documentary tried to be both a confessional and a marketing piece. That push and pull is visible in the flicker between soft, emotional scenes and hard-managed moments. It looked to some like someone trying to have both vulnerability and control, and the audience called the split. If you want change, it's not complicated. Do more of the small, boring things that build trust over time. Name session singers when their parts anchor a chorus. Share fair compensation, stop micromanaging confessions so tightly that they feel staged. Let the camera breathe without a PR needle guiding each beat. Those moves won't kill star power. They might actually build a different kind of endurance. And if you're a fan who loves the songs, you can keep loving them and still ask for transparency. Remember that the things you love were crafted by teams. You can celebrate the spectacle and also honor the people behind the sound. When you learn a background vocalist's name, say it. It won't ruin your memory. At the same time, don't ignore the grit it takes to hold a starship together. Lopez spent decades flipping her career back into relevance. Movies, music, television runs, residencies, endorsements. That work is real. She's a case study in turning attention into a durable business. The question is whether she wants a legacy built only on spectacle, or one that pairs spectacle with a clearer provenance. The public conversation will keep nudging her in that direction, because audiences now demand more than polish. They want truth. So when the chorus hits next time, do what listeners are increasingly doing. Ask who sang that line and what they were paid. Demand credits that are visible, not buried in legalese. Keep dancing, but stop treating the spectacle as a replacement for honesty. That's not moralizing, it's practical. The music industry evolved to favor image and scale. Now the audience is evolving back toward provenance. That's a healthy friction. If you're still with me, here's the last thing to sit on. Jennifer Lopez can absolutely repair this. She can do it without destroying the things she's built. She can credit the singers, compensate fairly, and still be the performer who brings people to their feet. She can also stop using heavy-handed copyright pushes against smaller creators and let the conversation breathe. Those moves would show an understanding of the shift in public expectations. They'd also be the kind of disciplined choices that sustained her all along. Work, reposition, persist. This story isn't about a single villain or a single mistake. It's a slow unraveling of an industry system and a star inside it. It's about what happens when power, money, art, and narrative all collide. And it's about a cultural moment in which audiences are finally wise enough to ask for both the show and the receipts. So tell me, when the next Lopez hook comes on, do you want to love the sound and keep asking about the source? Or do you want to ignore the credits and let the song do all the work? Either choice is honest. Both choices are yours. What if the velvet glove of pop fame is more abrasive than we think? We're past rumors now. We're into multiple voices claiming ownership of the core moments inside songs that defined an era. These aren't anonymous session names buried in liner notes. They are named singers, artists who also had careers, who also wrote and demoed, and who, after listening to the final releases, felt dislocated from their own work. When an artist says, "That's my voice, boy," and you line up the vocal track and the demo and they match, something real is happening. Fans don't ignore that revelation. They start rerouting their loyalty through questions of fairness, authorship, and economic justice. The stakes went beyond voices. The early 2000s were a battlefield of samples, ownership, and industry politics. The Loverboy story is one example. A planned sample gets intercepted, a release timing changes, and a hit is cannibalized or repurposed as part of a play. Those moves aren't just aesthetic decisions, they're strategic and sometimes spiteful. They rearrange careers. In that environment, the line between being uplifted and being weaponized is thin. Artists can be promoted or sidelined depending on who holds the sample rights, who owns the recording, and who controls the release schedule. For Mariah Carey and others, those experiences left deep marks. And those marks offer context for how Lopez's story unfolded inside an industry that sometimes treats human talent like chess pieces. You also need to understand how temporary power feels, like inevitability until it doesn't. Lopez's It Girl moment coincided with massive marketing machines that could manufacture attention. The green Versace dress, the image that broke search engines, the power of a moment amplified by PR and press, those are the kind of things that turn a pop star into a cultural shorthand. But cultural shorthand can be hollow if the people who made it possible aren't credited. When the shorthand becomes the story, the musicians who helped write it can vanish from the narrative. Since the documentary, there's a different axis of critique, the way Lopez presents her internal life. She's not the first star to curate vulnerability. The difference here is the combination of scale and previous narrative. Lopez's brand has always balanced curated spectacle with occasional intimate moments. The documentary pushed for full disclosure, but the edits betrayed a pattern of control, moments that reveal, followed by cuts that redirect. That editing rhythm turned confessional scenes into managed empathy, and the internet doesn't let that stand. The feeds turned the most earnest moments into GI Fable clips that played like satire. What should have been an emotional reset instead became a cultural debate about authenticity. The business reactions are instructive. The tour rebrand was a reaction. A label or team reframes when new material doesn't sell. That's not scandalous, it's pragmatic. But to the audience, it reads as a retreat, an admission the new narrative didn't stick. Promoters and industry analysts don't craft narratives because they want to lie. They do it because attendance equals survival. Still, when a star funds a risky project and then pivots back to nostalgia, viewers sense the calculation. That perception makes the documentary less a cathartic reveal and more a costly experiment that didn't buy back public trust. Look at the platform dynamics. Independent creators who posted critical takes reported content removal or strikes. When creators feel penalized for commentary, the backlash multiplies. Local creators don't have legal teams. They have clicks and followers. Heavy-handed enforcement, intentional or not, looks like a power play. You can argue legal rights and fair use, but optics are messy. The audience watches the whole cycle and interprets it as an adult. Is the star amplifying a conversation or shutting it down? Meanwhile, not all the critique was outside the industry. Musicians and collaborators sometimes couch their complaints in professionalism, not spite. Some say, we're collaborators, we respect her, while still hinting at unfair pay or credit. That's the nuance the headline culture misses. It's not just envy, it's frustration about a system that can make you feel invisible. These are artists who should be listed and whose fees should reflect how essential their lines became. The human element is brutal too. People who worked for the star describe tension on auditions, on sets, in limousines. Stories circulate about rigid rules and harsh reactions. Again, some of this is standard celebrity lore. Most big stars have peculiar demands, but when a pattern forms and multiple sources describe similar experiences, the public stitches them into a narrative that's hard to unpick simply by releasing a documentary. Perception has weight. Reputation moves slower than ticket sales, but can be more durable. Yet the milestones remain. Lopez's career included crossover success that many artists never reach. She turned film roles into pop moments, and pop moments into global brand currency. She has recorded chart-topping singles, starred in films, and sold out arenas. Lukewarm reviews and some missed tickets don't erase that. Instead, they complicate how we measure what she's achieved. The legacy question becomes layered. Did she push visibility for Latin entertainers? Absolutely. Was her ascent assisted by industry moves that sometimes blurred credit? The evidence suggests nuance, and nuance is what a thoughtful audience now expects. The solution here is operational, not moralistic. It's administrative. Clearer credits, fair pay, legal transparency. It's also reputational. Don't use heavy-handed legal tools on creators who are doing critical breakdowns. Let critics critique. Where applicable, respond with facts, not takedowns. The leverage stars hold over distribution should be used to uplift collaborators, not silence them. That's a smarter long-term play. Now, think about the music itself. For many fans, music is sacred. A chorus is memory. If you love a Lopez hook, that feeling doesn't evaporate because someone else sang the studio ad-libs. You can still love the song while appreciating the complexity behind it. This is not an either-or. It's richer when you know who built the sound. It adds depth rather than taking anything away. From a creator perspective, the industry needs to reckon with the mess. Session artists need clearer contracts that address not just payment but acknowledgement when their performances become integral to a release. Labels need to standardize how vocal contributions are credited publicly, not hidden in dense legal copies. The law will lag the culture. Practices shift faster when consumers demand transparency. In the end, Lopez's team could choose to respond by making structural changes that would actually calm the conversation. Credit the chorus singers, pay fair royalties, make the documentary's behind-the-scenes credits easy to find. Those aren't glamorous fixes, but they work. The audience then sees tangible steps, not just PR language. Those steps will matter more than a passive social media defense. Here's a human framing. Lopez is a person built by public work. That visibility takes a toll. The urge to control a narrative is understandable. But when control starts to obscure contributors' roles and the public senses a defensive posture, trust frays. You can't build intimacy by editing it into submission. You build intimacy by being clear, naming names, and showing the labor that made the moment possible. The soap opera heat is the simplest takeaway. A Star's Rise, people who feel sidelined, a film meant to fix things that looks fixed, a market that votes with attendance, and creators who call foul. It's messy and emotionally charged because it sits at the intersection of art, identity, economics, and fame. That complexity is why people keep rewatching cuts, lining up demos with masters and arguing late at night about the ethics of pop. Time, consider this. All of modern pop is a collab. Sometimes the collaborators get the credit, sometimes they don't. The important shift now is fans asking questions, not just accepting the package. That pressure moves the industry. It tips the scales from smoke and mirror tactics toward visible crediting and cleaner practices. If Lopez wants to be remembered for more than a few headline stunts, she can make changes that are obvious and meaningful. Those changes are the type of boring ethical work that builds a different legacy. Stars who do that tend to keep more than they gain because they keep respect. Respect costs nothing, but it's priceless. There's also a narrower legal truth to watch. When a vocal sample or a demo becomes the spine of a smash, control and ownership questions can turn into legal disputes. Not every missing credit leads to a court case. Often, the behind-the-scenes negotiations are messy, private, and settled in ways the public never sees, but the possibility of litigation is a check that labels and artists use. That doesn't excuse dodgy credits. It explains why the documentation can be convoluted. Contracts get redacted, credits get buried, and the people who sang the lines sometimes get a one-time fee rather than a slice of residuals. The money flows, but not always to the people you'd expect. Look at the human cost. Session singers who feel slighted speak about lost income and missed recognition. When your hook belongs to a background vocalist and that vocalist isn't visible, the professional opportunity to parlay that moment into a career boost is lost. For working musicians, those moments matter. They pay bills, open doors, and build reputations. It's easy for a headline star to shrug and move on. For the session singer, that hook could have been a lifeline. Then there's the cultural element. Lopez's prominence pushed Latin representation into mainstream moments in ways that mattered beyond sales. She normalized a presence on film and television, a style of performance, and a commercial viability that helped other artists. That matters. It also complicates the critique. You can support increased representation while still asking for fair practice. These things aren't mutually exclusive, they're layered, and that layering is where productive critique can live. If you want the gossip-turned documentary, there's fodder for days. There are producer rivalries, label politics, and stories about executives favoring one artist over another. There are also tales of opportunistic signings and managers using talent placement to shift narratives. Those details are dramatic but predictable. Power concentrates and power moves strategically. That's how you get breakout stars who sometimes outrun the paperwork. For listeners, the practical takeaway is simple. Keep dancing, but dig a little deeper when you can. If a behind-the-scenes singer's name shows up in an article or in a comment thread, say it out loud. When you binge a documentary, look at the credits. Give artists the small square of recognition the industry often denies them. That doesn't punish the star, it beautifies the whole story by being truer. Now let's turn toward concrete fixes that would actually move the needle. Make credits readable and prominent on streaming sites, not hidden. Create a standard metadata field for featured vocal contributors so that everyone who sang a memorable line is visible. Reward proper crediting in the award circuits, and let transparency be a metric of excellence. Those changes are procedurally simple and culturally significant. They reroute attention and bring fair economic consequences. There's an emotional truth tucked into all of this, too. The more you ride a curated image, the more you need the audience to believe in the story. The more you need the audience to believe, the thinner the margin for a mistake. Lopez's documentary tried to reconcile that. I am the person you think I am, but also more. The public read that as, I will give you more only if it's carefully presented. People noticed the presentation. They reacted accordingly. If you're trying to measure harm, look at the creators who say they were hit with strikes. Look at the session singers who say they weren't fairly paid. Look at the tour dates canceled and the rebranding. Those are measurable outcomes. If you want to measure good, look at how many people danced to her songs, how much the residency made, and how many doors her visibility opened for others. Both measures matter. Both are part of the ledger. Let's finish with a practical prompt for Lopez's team and for any star facing similar scrutiny. Show the receipts. Make the documentation public when possible. If a vocal part is central to your song, list the vocalist on the streaming page, the liner notes, and the press kit. Offer equitable shares where those parts drive performance metrics. And when creators post fair use critiques, resolve disputes openly rather than striking first. Transparency costs nothing and buys goodwill. One last thing, the nostalgia economy is powerful, but it's not immortal. Fans will pay for memory, but they increasingly want integrity alongside spectacle. The next generation of listeners grew up in an environment where credits and provenance are clickable. They care where the music comes from. Lopez can meet that expectation and, in doing so, expand her legacy beyond the old models. So what do you take from all this? If you still love the blood and sweat moments, dance moves, costume reveals, blockbuster hits, keep loving them. But also ask for names when you see a voice that sounds familiar, and don't let the credits be an afterthought. Demand that the people who made the hooks significant get recognized and paid. That's not being petty, it's being fair. And to close, remember that pop is messy and human. Behind every polished star is a team of people whose labor animated the art. If you love the art, honor the labor. If you care about truth, ask for it. Subscribe and follow for all truth. No gatekeeping of industry stars and all that comes along with them.